You have different domains of knowledge. They need a way of talking to each other. It's not up to humans to define that, because as we know, AI can work out how to talk to AI itself in a very efficient manner. And a black box will be created. And you have to run with that. You can regulate the inputs and the outputs, but not what happens in between. It's like trying to regulate what's in your head, right? So you get these domain areas of knowledge. So you might have something that knows, for instance, about Spain. And then you get something that knows about e-commerce in Spain. And then you get something that knows about SEO in Spain. But the thing that knows about Gert has to belong to you, because in Spain, there are very good privacy laws, and all data by definition belongs to you if you've generated it, right? It's not the same around the world, but I think this is the model where it will go, because ultimately I think it has to.
Welcome back to SEOLeverage.com. Gert Mellach here. This is episode 128. We always try to bring in really interesting guests that talk to the topics that I know are on everybody's minds here. We have a lot of course creators, consultants, Shopify store owners, and experts here listening to the show and wondering where the entire AI movement is going. At the time of recording this, I sometimes have to laugh because I'm between two worlds, between like local brick and mortar stores that just discover how remarketing works and if they should actually run some Google ads. And then I have people who are at the edge of technology, I would say, and always have been playing with AI, artificial intelligence, language, or the text generation, generative AI and things. So I really thought it might be interesting to dive a little bit deeper, analyze a little bit where we actually are right now and what's coming. So who would be better to talk to than a futurist? So I invited Tim Warren to the show. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks very much.
I really appreciate that you take the time. We met on LinkedIn. I was actually doing some research and I came across your profile and really was impressed by the really, to call it something, well-rounded profile and experience that you have in your trajectory from working at the biggest consulting firms and being an investor and speaker and founder of several companies, obviously, and then futurist, and then also what I really found really interesting, a Chief Provocation Officer. I found that one good. Yeah. So really happy that you take the time.
That's right. Thanks. Yeah, I've got a, you could call it a rounded career. You could say I don't fit in anywhere. And one of my associates came up with that idea of Chief Provocation Officer. And the idea is there that I just force people to think in a different way. And always something interesting comes out of that.
I think that I definitely agree. I like talking to people like yourself because it's really just you just have a different, it seems you have a different angle on a lot of things. I've been watching some of your videos, some of your interviews as well. I'm really looking forward to this. I don't have much notes here. I really want to know where this conversation wants to go. I think we are going to save the time on going through your entire trajectory. What is one thing based on what you're doing right now that people should know about you?
I think you actually highlighted it by saying you haven't got much of a structure here or plans, but you've got lots of questions. That's the thing I really want to encourage people to think about is you don't at this kind of time need to have answers. What you need to have is questions, because I don't think anyone who's out there who's telling you what to do or what's exactly going to happen, I don't think they're right. I don't think they will be right. What's essential is to be adaptable, to be flexible. These are the things that over the course of human history have seen us well as a species that's not actually particularly good at anything, possibly apart from thinking, but we're very adaptable. And as things change, technology changes, culture changes, the ones that are most able to adapt are the ones who most survive. And at the moment, I think we're undergoing a unique revolution in technological change. And the way I would describe that is all other industrial revolutions that have occurred have primarily affected people in the hands-on, or you might call it blue-collar, manual parts of society. If you're pulling a plow and a horse comes along, the horse is going to get the job because it can do the work of 20 people. Now, if you're driving a horse, pulling a plow, and a tractor comes along, the tractor's going to get the job. But this is different. And I'll explain why, because this is the first time we've had a technological revolution. I don't really call it an industrial revolution, a technological revolution, which is coming in at the top levels of society in terms of it's the white collar jobs, right? I'm just going to pull down my blind a little bit because the sun is coming up, which is welcome because it's a cold day. But this is coming let's be blunt, it's coming for you and me. It's coming for lawyers. It's coming for people that lead with their minds. And this is new. And I'm seeing a certain level of resistance from those people to change itself. And I know that the people that will thrive will be the people that say, how does this affect me? How can I ride that wave? And so that's where I would encourage people to think. And I think that's probably a good starter for our conversation, which is, how do you adjust to this incredibly rapidly changing landscape?
I think this is an excellent framing because it was really funny. We have been doing a lot of AI work even before ChatGPT really brought AI like in everybody's world, I would say. We had been like using the early text generators in SEO. There were tools out there that started to go from machine learning to really some language models, and we've been playing for this for a long time. But it was always something where I said, look, this is just not there yet, right? I can always have a junior writer, and the junior writer is still going to be better than that. We then came to a point, it was even ahead of ChatGPT, probably a year and a half, we came across some tools that actually, where I said, look, I'm not going to hire a junior writer anymore because this is decent content. It's not editor level and publishable, but I don't need a junior writer anymore. Somebody can write this. And I think this was also where we obviously brought this to our clients' attention, that we're still having a bigger writing team for their websites and for SEO, and started to help them figure out processes where they could use those tools. But then ChatGPT came, and we had actually a few clients sign off from our services because they were pretty shocked, really shocked. They said, look, Google is not going to be here next month anymore. Everybody is going to search on ChatGPT or have a bot that searches on ChatGPT and they have it on their phone. We actually then got everybody to sign back up after a month because we just started to think. So everybody has a shock reaction, which was really funny. Yeah. I'm let's just see what if we can explain.
I've got an analogy there. Yeah? I saw this happen, and it goes along with the Gartner hype cycle and that kind of thing. But I've got an analogy where I compare it to a relationship.
Yeah.
You meet someone, and this person, they are just magic. They solve every problem. They make you feel happy. You explore during the day. They keep you warm at night. Everything about them is perfect, and they literally glow like an angel. After a little while, you're having discussions about who's doing the dishes, right? So, and it turns out that they're a normal person. They're probably about as normal as you are. So you go into these things, and humans are interesting. Over time, we are balanced, but we achieve balance through time. And initially, humans tend to be very optimistic. And you see a new technology, AI is going to solve everything. And I remember these going back about 3 years when the use of LLMs was just pre-GPT. And I remember people talking in hushed whispers saying, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be using Google anymore. And this includes when ChatGPT came out on the 30th of November 21, which seems like a long time ago now. And then I saw these communities spring up, and people were saying that I haven't used Google for searching in a month. I just used ChatGPT. And then the funniest thing came out, which is that ChatGPT's data was a year old, because that's how long it had taken to train it. And all of these people kind of had egg on their face. Now, there's a lot of questions in there, and maybe I'll take some notes and we can talk about it later. Google missed something pretty big here, but people optimistically saw opportunity ahead of accuracy and proven and that kind of thing. So they launch into this, hey, let's do something new. And you would have seen pretend SEO firms sprung up, and they could generate keywords and all this kind of stuff. And they'd say, oh, I don't know why it hasn't seen my website because it's got old data in it, but that's right. We'll find a similar one. We'll generate keywords, and you know what? It works like an eager junior in your firm. And I've run a lot of intern programs. I've worked on intern programs for Goldman Sachs. I've worked on them for my own companies, and people come in and ideally you get people with the right attitude, and they come in and they're very eager. And they're certain they've done a good job. They haven't always, but their attitude is good. And you can work with attitude. But they will give you something. It'll be hit and miss. Sometimes you'll get something that's about 50%. And you think, you know what? It has saved me a bit of time. And then you give it to an intermediate person, and they get it to about 80%. And then it's got to go to a senior. But if you look at the overall productivity chain, the question is, overall, have I done something that is better or faster? Those are the two roughly things. Better covers a lot of areas there. So I started seeing a turning point where I think it was the second iteration. I think GPT 3.5 came out. And while myself and the AI industry, we were using models that were already ahead of that, the question was, what was the person in the street seeing and doing? And I saw a presentation from an SEO firm, and it was very impressive. And it's not how you can use SEO, but it's how does a SEO firm use it. So they weren't saying you can do it cheaper, because that for me is not one of the value metrics.
Yeah.
The metric is value. We can do it better. We will do it. We'll take it'll be a bit faster. It will be better, and it's going to cost the same. Yeah. And that's valuable. And that's where I imagine you're positioning yourself. Now, a lot of those SEO firms have now disappeared. They created a product or a website, and they were really crap, and they've all gone. There was a joke 2 years ago when GPT was first around saying there's a new company every hour. And I changed it to a company lives and a company dies every hour. And it's just like that.
Yeah, it was too fast, actually. I remember talking to Joe Fear, who was on his podcast as well, who's always in this AI space as well. And we were talking about it, and it's just overwhelming, right? It was like as if this was like the gold rush on everybody who brings out and everybody trying to put AI on top of their tool just because they connect to ChatGPT or something.
Oh yeah.
And it was just really people started to create problems they didn't even have just to use like the latest tool, which was really funny.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Just try to make the use cases you have better rather than developing new problems you didn't even think of before you saw a video about this tool before.
Oh, very much so. Look, I say if someone launches something and they call it an AI company, it makes me laugh, but I really warn against the concept of that. They come out with a name and they put .ai on the end. If they've been around for a couple of years and they know what they're doing, that's one thing. But if they come up with a new idea and say, we're gonna customize ChatGPT for you, I'm sorry, but that's a terrible business idea. It's not a business idea. It comes, it goes. I want to know something enduring. And there's a phrase from Neil deGrasse Tyson. He talks about it with climate change, and he draws the picture of a couple walking, because I'm making it gender neutral, a couple walking on the beach with their dog. Now, if you want to see what's happening with something over the term, you watch the couple, not the dog. The dog's running around like this all over the place. It's having a fabulous time, and it's really entertaining to watch, but it doesn't tell you. That's a random walk, we call it in science. It doesn't tell you where things are going. But if you watch the couple, they walk from one end of the beach to the other, they have a cup of tea and they walk back, whatever it is that they might do, that is actually the trend. So I really avoid it's funny, I'm on a podcast here, but I really avoid podcasts that talk about the latest, greatest thing that's happened today. Because you know what? I'm not that interested. I'm interested in the people, I'm interested in, if I said to you, you've done 128 podcasts, including this one. If I said, what are the top 2 that stand out for you? That's what I'm going to listen to. I'm not going to listen to yesterday's one until I've seen it's not just other people's proof, but some things stand alone. Some companies rise to the fore. And I think you see a few of those. I'd select out. Obviously, OpenAI has done an interesting job. We can talk more about them, but Anthropic is one that has quietly done something of high quality and is growing in awareness because the quality is good. Their marketing might not be as effective as OpenAI, but they do a better job. And so I actually don't use ChatGPT at the moment. Ask me next week, it might be different. But at the moment, I'm using Claude because I get a better outcome from it. And I measure this scientifically and, partly scientifically. And then I measure it and I see how it's doing and then I move to that. But that's what I want to encourage people to be. If you've got a firm that knows about SEO, the AI is learning from those companies. It can encapsulate it and it might be able to do it quicker and it might be able to do it in a way that's good. It's better than the cheap plan or it's better than you can do what yourself, but it is not going to equal what the leading SEO firms are going to be able to achieve. It never will because it's learning from us.
No, absolutely. It just makes sense. Also, there's just so much that goes into specifically an SEO strategy here, for example, that we just know about the client, that I know before I even talk to the client. And then you get their specific goals, you see their specific situation. It's just there's not going to be so much out there that's really would be good training material for a lot of sites to actually start now doing or pushing the site in the right direction. So for SEO, I'm not worried. I just think it's going to be more colorful. We're going to check more tools, where you're ranking, where you're coming up, what kind of online reputation is presented about your brand. We are really big on online reputation. So I think this is going to be interesting because we see lots of brands really suffering from reputational issues these days, where the training material was just a Glassdoor page talking about the founder shouting at his employees. And this is now the training material for whether this is a good law firm to work with.
I got to mention that's really a sore point for me. It's a sore point for me. I had a couple of I really I did everything that I could during COVID to look after the team and that kind of thing. And ultimately, it was an unknown time. We had something we'd never dealt with, and you can't actually optimize a situation. You can't be the best of everything. But I didn't let anyone go off the team. I supported them. I called out to them. I said, talk to me, talk to your manager, talk to your leader, your boss, whoever you want to, all your employees, whatever, just stay connected. And then I had a couple of employees who decided that I'd caused COVID and they left and I gave them good references and they went somewhere else and they gave me these terrible Glassdoor reviews. So I had like 40 5-star ones and then I had 2 that just popped up 1-star reviews saying that the company was going out of business and then I was mad and I thought, you know what? I'll take 2 out of 40. That's not bad because this is a statistical area, but I was really disappointed that I'd done everything and I could. But I think that highlights something. People are non-deterministic. We are probabilistic. And, I might treat you in the best way and we might have a really good conversation and you might think, you know what, everything Tim said was rubbish. And maybe you hide episode number 128. But that's how people are. We don't walk in a perfectly straight line. We look like we're slightly drunk, even first thing in the morning. People are biological. We are variable. And when we understand that AI operates like that, we can actually use it better. People think that it's actually most people think AI is like an incredibly good database. And these are digging into the technical terms. They think it's logical and deterministic, and they get a specific answer out of it. But that's not really the way AI works. You can ask it different questions and you'll get different. You can ask it the same question, you'll get different answers each time. And there's a range of reasons why that is. But people are the same. And I ask people who say, they say, oh, I've got this one app and it can completely replace that, call it SEO or something. And I say, when did AI ask you how you feel? And there's typically a long pause. And they either say it doesn't matter, in which case they're probably sociopathic or psychopathic. But I think emotions and those human aspects really matter, because on one day I'm going to feel like I want something, and on a different day I feel like I want something else. And for me, that is my reality. Now, I don't think machines can capture that yet. And there'll be all kinds of people saying, oh, look, we can put up a camera and we can assess emotions. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to swear on your podcast, bullshit. I know that while we're having a good conversation here, I bet if we meet face to face, we'll form a deeper connection with each other. And that's the bright side. I think there's always two sides to things, especially with technology. The positive side is people are now starting to see, a couple of years into this revolution, people are starting to see that uniquely human impact. Podcasts are still number one way that people love to consume information. And it's just two people talking without a plan. But when do people go and listen to two computers talking without a plan? Well, I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, Facebook had a bunch of AI. It was training by talking to each other. It's a very clever, it's a no human input type of training. Well, it very quickly worked out. These two entities decided that English wasn't a good way to talk, came up with a more efficient language, and then we couldn't understand what it was saying. They turned it off, but it was expressing something different to a human need, right? But humans do that. And in a family, you have these shortcut codes for someone might, the classic word is if someone says, I'm fine, then they're definitely not fine. But again, it's a good point. When did AI ask you how you feel?
Definitely love those examples. It's so funny, right? If you think about it, everybody thought like at first, yeah, this is just something that's going to do my job for me. I think this was probably what resonated a lot with people. They just saw this could write text, and this is all the emails. I don't have to write them anymore. All the spreadsheet reports are going to be done for me. And I think first it was like, yeah, somebody's going to do my job, and I'm still paid. And then everybody thought, hey, maybe they don't need me anymore. And then you start really hearing about call centers laying off staff and VAs losing their jobs and I don't know what. But it's really also for us in SEO, it's always interesting to then see, okay, what does this now actually mean in practical terms, right? How does this affect us? How does this affect the way people search? So whether good or bad, the fact is a lot of people now search on Claude, on ChatGPT, on Perplexity, on Gemini, and Copilot is in my Skype now. I just discovered this the other day. I didn't even know that. It's just something that's here apparently to stay. It looks like it's going to be quite varied. There might be I could imagine specific search engines, like we go for products, we go to Amazon. For videos, we go to YouTube. Maybe for information about fitness, I go to a specific AI bot that just seems to be the best in giving this information. Where do you see this going?
Look, I think you bring up an interesting point there. And if I look back to the early days of the public-facing internet, because I know it was around, in days of old within universities, but it wasn't public. I really regard it from about 1995, it became publicly available. You could connect to it in different ways, and started to become kind of useful. And that's when I started getting involved with it. So I was fortunate with my timing. So early on, you had directories and you knew where to go, and you had these things there was one system called Gopher, and Gopher was this way you had to know where to go, and then you'd look in directories for things, and those tended to become kind of the Lycos style. Well, that was maybe a bit later. You had essentially directories, and you knew how to hunt through directories, and you found things. And then you had the Alta Vistas and Lycos and that kind of thing. And the idea was some were better at something, and you did tend to use it. Now, I think the cleverness of Google was they used the existing network as their IP, and it was brilliant. They turned the concept inside out. They took what was out there and the concept of backlinks for validity and veracity, and then they internalized it and came up with this PageRank algorithm. And it was a pretty smart way of doing it. Interestingly, we've been talking about this. I was studying computer science at the time. We'd been talking about it in computer science as a way of ranking things without human input for quite some time, but they just did it. Do you know that the two guys that started Google, they came out of the AI lab, and they were looking at ways that you could use, AI reinforcement of existing data structures to indicate validity of data. So they started doing this, and it worked. And I remember the first Google page, and it was not much more simple than the Google page today, but they used everyone else's data. Now, I do think at the moment, for instance, I think Claude is very good at more natural styles of writing. ChatGPT is great at telling you some, information about, elephants from Wikipedia from a few years ago or something like that. It's quite a good general one, and I suggest people go there at first because it's pretty easy. But you're getting a little bit of movement to the edges. Now, it looks like a lot of technological transitions where at first you get an explosion in the number of companies, and it's this first part of the diamond. You expand the number of things that are doing, but then you get evolution sets in, and kind of survival of the fittest, what humans are particularly good at. And the crappy ones disappear. The quite good specialist ones get bored, and then you get a reduction in the number of things. Now, why did Google have virtually zero competition for that time? Well, they bought quite a lot of things that looked good in infancy. And if Google was good at something, it was good at understanding trends. They missed a couple of big ones, but we'll give them a pass on that one. We have to see that they're seen, Google is now seen as this thing. Google's older than my kids. But to me, Google's a new company, right? So perception is reality.
Yeah.
You can get these specialist ones. Now, what will happen, I think, in business, you will get domains of specialty. New Zealand law is comparable to Canadian and British law, but it's very different to French and American law. So I would imagine, let's go to British law, English law. That is where you can get a specialist engine that can be very good. Now, there are two approaches to that. You get the internal version where one of the Magic Circle firms builds its own LLM and its own IP, and it doesn't just do junior lawyer stuff, it can do senior lawyer stuff. And you turn 20 hours of junior lawyer into 2 hours of work, and all you need is 1 hour of partner time. Now, that can now be cheaper, it can be better, and it can be faster. That's win-win-win, apart from for the junior and the intermediate lawyers. And the future of work is a different topic. We can pick up on that at a different time, but you've got the engines doing that. Now, do you do that internally? So it's the one firm, or do the firms get together? If they do, I can tell you that regulation will be coming from. Or alternatively, do you put a group learning environment, a group LLM, an LLM, a legal large language model, together for the whole of the industry? If you do that, you create a low watermark. And that low watermark is the worst anyone should do. So you can have someone come out of law school, pass the bar exam, and use this, and they can be at least the average, the expected level for all lawyers in the industry. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Regulated standards tend to be just a little bit below what people are happy with, but it's much better than being much worse than what people are happy with. So there's those industry directions there. Now, I think what's likely to happen is you will get a couple of corporate providers. At first, there'll be 100. There'll be startups, BritLaw.ai, and some of them will be good and some of them will be bad. One of them will come through with a Google-like breakthrough in terms of how to do it. and we can delve into the details of some of that later, but there will be an obvious advantage. You will get the Google, you will get the also rans, call it the Microsoft Bings, sorry, Microsoft, but you lost that one, of the legal world. And then you will have this corporate connection into them. Everyone use Microsoft Word. Even if you use Google Suite, you still use Word because you want to look like a professional. Startups use Google, professionals use Microsoft. That's the way it goes, okay, for productivity tools. I think that's the way you expect it to be. But if you look at health might be different, because health is data that's owned by the individual. And I think health, if there's one area, will guide the development of AI systems themselves. And I think this is what you're going to see. You will see a move to federated artificial intelligence systems. And this is, and I'll give you an example. It could be health, but it could be your shopping habits, right? You have different domains of knowledge. They need a way of talking to each other. It's not up to humans to define that, because as we know, AI can work out how to talk to AI itself in a very efficient manner. And a black box will be created. And you have to run with that. You can regulate the inputs and the outputs, but not what happens in between. It's like trying to regulate what's in your head, right? So you get these domain areas of knowledge. So you might have something that knows, for instance, about Spain. And then you get something that knows about e-commerce in Spain. And then you get something that knows about SEO in Spain. But the thing that knows about Gert has to belong to you, because in Spain, there are very good privacy laws, and all data by definition belongs to you if you've generated it, right? It's not the same around the world, but I think this is the model where it will go, because ultimately I think it has to. But it's going to be strongest in health, because that stuff's really private. But with your shopping, like this morning I was shopping for gimbal cameras, right? Now, I do not want ChatGPT's search engine to know that. What I want is call it a personal assistant or a personal companion to know that. Now, that is going to have all of the power of an LLM, and it's going to be local. It's going to be on this device here. Now, this device, I can tell you, this is going to change. This is another futurist topic. This is going to change, but it's more or less going to be like a personal device that's going to be around a phone or a watch or a wearable or something. And it needs to know incredibly much about you, and it's going to use an LLM, but it won't be a public one. It's going to be a private one. And this is where I talk about MLMs, a medium language model. These are not enormous. These only need to know about you, but they are robustified. That is a word. They are made more robust by federating into other models. So it federates into my local model. Now, if I've got mine and you've got yours, and we're talking between two different countries, your companion will moderate, regulate, and gate the information that it shares with mine. I know that I'm talking to you, so there will be a anonymized mode where you can shop in a completely anonymous fashion into any store. And all of your thoughts and hopes and preferences are stored in your personal data store, incredibly well encrypted. And I tell you, so much of what we're doing at the moment is going to be solved by cryptography. I don't mean crypto or Bitcoin or that kind of thing, but the cryptography algorithms themselves are going to store that in a way that is safe. And then when things are shopped, you're going to, people worry about third-party cookies. Don't worry about that. You're not going to know anything about the entity that's shopping. The IP address, you're not going to know the person, anything that they've bought before. All of those things will be stored, and I'm getting back to SEO because it's going to be really difficult for you guys for a while, but that's going to be stored in my data model. All of your health data will be here. Now, I'm a motorcyclist, right? Now, say I carry this with me, which I always do, and maybe even a backup, and I go on a motorcycle ride, which I am going to do. I'm riding in Vietnam soon. Just imagine I come off my motorcycle, I knock my head, and I am I am in an emergency situation of some way. This detects that I've had a 19G issue. That's not good. I've probably passed out because I'm not a Formula One driver. And it makes available to emergency services who have a unique identifier. They just scan it and it says, this is my blood type. This is my thing. This is what I need. I'm allergic to that. I've got insurance. That's really important. This is where it is. Take me here and you can evac me out of Vietnam to Korea for treatment, right? That's really valuable. And that can happen in 2 hours. That's the power of this federated model that's also highly protected. At the moment, we have an open by default model. Now, if the companies are saying any data you put in here is safe, I think that's a nice, ambitious aim. I do not believe it's safe. And I don't know why it didn't get more attention, but I won't say who. Various model providers have issues with your personal data popping up with other people. But that's the direction I think it's heading. Now, related to SEO, you're going to move in the direction of representing your products very well, but not being able to understand specifically the person unless they give you first-party data. Now, I believe this brings in the good old-fashioned idea of trust, because if you and I trust each other, and I said to you, hey, you know what? I want a cool camera so I can video my more unusual moments on my motorcycle trip. Well, you can turn that on. I would trust you to go and buy something just based on the few bits of information we've had. In AI, we call this one or few shot learning. I say, I want a cool gimbal camera for recording interesting events. You could go and get me a GoPro or a DJI or something like that, and I'd trust you more than I'm going to trust a machine to do it, because I'll just get recommended everything and I'll spend $10,000, and you know how those algorithms work. Customers who bought that also bought this. Bullshit. they didn't, but it's not a bad averaging algorithm. But that's the question. How can you move to understanding traits and behaviors and what I would describe as more biological algorithms? What's going to appeal today? What are the things that are being useful? How about this? How about saying, you're looking for this kind of a camera. Here is a famous video podcaster who uses this kind of camera for their adventure photography. That is going to sway me more. Do you know why? It's a personal story. And that's the kind of thing I imagine things going in that direction of. And that's not my problem to solve. It's your question to ask. And that's getting back to that same theme, empowering questions.
I think I love listening to these examples, and it definitely obviously gets the creativity and the fantasy started a little bit. What we definitely also matches some trends that we see that Google has. So I'm old enough to know we had Google Plus, and we have had our IDs, and Google's wish back then was that everybody on their website puts in their ID from Google Plus, so we finally can tie the website to the Google Plus profile. Yeah. If we know the Google Plus profile is legit based on the behavior, we know the website is legit. And it all made sense. It was like a beautiful,
and the product catalog ties it,
right? So this was fun. We all have played with this a little bit, but now what we do see, and this is where the knowledge graph in Google comes in. Google just is really getting smarter and smarter at figuring out with consistent data who a person actually is in many, many cases. So unless somebody is completely hidden or hardly participates in socials or has any website or anything, they're pretty good at figuring out who somebody is. They sometimes get it wrong, or they might have duplicates. I think I'm coming up 4 times in the knowledge graph because there's a developer version of me, then there's an over SEO version, there's an author.
I have the same. You pointed out I've done many different. Yeah, I've done many.
We can work on it. We can teach it that this is the same person. We can teach the knowledge graph these things, and this works. But it is interesting that the knowledge graph for people, for a person, entity as they call it, is definitely something that's becoming stronger. So Google apparently really tries to tie this EAT theme to the person directly and the trust.
Can I give you an example?
Person.
I'll give you an example here of how humans are inadvertently training the machine for this. Okay, so you do it all the time. you've got two copies of a contact. You think, oh, I've got the mobile number over here and I've got the email address over there, and you join them in your phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the phone that's being trained here, right? So
Yeah.
now you have a point where a human is training the machine, which can propagate through the network to explain that version of you in the knowledge graph is also this version of you. Now, how does it combine it? What you do when you combine something with people and you've got different things, you look for temporal differences, time, right? So I've been a professional musician, right? I did that when I was a teenager through to my early 20s. After that, I've done it for fun. Okay, then I've been I was a software developer. I did that for my 20s, through my 20s. And then I was ... You can tie that together. And then you get a 4-dimensional picture of a person. The 4th dimension of a person is the time. And the 5th dimension of them is their existence in the cyber world out there in the internet. Because how they operate on the internet is different to how they operate in the physical world. It's very interesting. This stuff used to just go into diaries. Now people get into chat rooms or onto Reddit or other nefarious places, and they exhibit different aspects to themselves.
That's fascinating. It's really fascinating, but it's really also, I see like this overall trend as well, where the platforms obviously want to really tie something legit to the person's user. So we have LinkedIn asking you to upload your ID. We have
yes. I did a rant on LinkedIn about that. That might have been around the time we connected, actually. And it went quite big. And I said I could see no valid reason. And they said, oh, don't worry, we use a third party to validate it. Well, I'm even more worried, because at least LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft and they'll do something. LinkedIn, at the time of asking me, had a dweller they couldn't get rid of in the network. So goodness me.
That's crazy, but it's also Google, for example, to get a Google business profile validated, you need to record a video of you in your building with your logo on the board, etc. It's like they have this trust. In my mind, this is a trust score, right? And they just try to get your trust score up. And if I can now reach out to a third party that has your LinkedIn validation, I can use this data for trust score. If I have a video of you showing me something, it might add 5 trust points. If you have 5,000 email addresses on Gmail you interact with.
The precedent that you've got here, that's correct. The precedent you've got here is the only companies that have traditionally done this are states and credit companies. Now, in the US, credit companies got quite good, and then that's led out a little bit. But those online validation companies have essentially come from the background of credit companies, right? Now, credit companies are not there for you as a person. They're there to protect. They're not there to protect the consumer at all. They're there to wedge you up with the biggest mortgage and credit card you can possibly get. So you're just on the edge of going broke without going broke, so people can make a lot of money out of you. And what I'd like to see, and this leads on to the direction of AI, but the direction of this stuff is a digital assistant or a digital companion is there, and they are your advocate, right? They're not trying to get you into the biggest house and the biggest mortgage, whatever it might be,
right,
or another credit card. They are aiming for your financial well-being. So you imagine your digital assistant saying to you, I've identified that you're doing a number of these. It looks like you might be interested in making some investments. Would you like to talk about this so I can help you? Because it's not an expert yet. And by an expert, I don't mean an expert in financial services. I mean an expert in you. How do you feel? What do you want? And it might ask you a couple of questions. And I'm qualified to say this because I worked in financial services. You seem to be quite risk tolerant when it comes to riding a motorcycle or bungee jumping or whatever it might be. But, the riskiest investment you've ever had is X. Why is that? Are you worried about losing money? You might say, I'm worried about looking after my parents because they don't work anymore. They've got health issues and I need to have cash available for that. Now, I've got life insurance. So if I die, they'll be taken care of. But if I'm alive, I need to earn the money. That's really valid, right? So how does a personal assistant do that? It can then learn and research. It doesn't need to be a large model. It doesn't need to learn everything. It just needs to learn the aspect of what's out there that meets your needs. And it might come back and say, you know what, this is a kind of investment that might suit you because it builds in a living insurance component where if you're not able to work, it gives you income insurance, and then it gives you this and it gives you that, etc. That's the kind of thing. Now, I would prefer to talk to a personal assistant than insurance advisor. The idea, and this is something I'm going through at the moment, the idea with an insurance advisor is that they are your advocate. But I'll tell you what, they work for themselves. Guaranteed. They sell the thing that makes them the most money. Bottom line.
Yeah.
They will tell you how that's good for you, but they are not working for you.
I think one thing that really resonates here, just to interrupt you for a moment, this whole companion, this digital companion thing really resonates because what we have been doing for a long time here is really focus a lot on initial conversations when we bring a client on board to really get like their entire ideas about their industry, their tool, their brand, their product, their service, all extract this thing. Like we call this internally, we shouldn't talk about this. We call this information extraction, right? Like really, this is information extraction to the way that we are essentially preparing to actually have them just answer a few questions on audio recording, and we just have them some material we can plug in as context into AI tools to then create content with this as the input. But it seems like a little bit the same idea where you extract what you need for a particular use case in order to have this stored somewhere. And now I can plug this into a content creation where I can plug this into an analysis.
But what you're doing is you're building a small, high relevancy model about that customer, which is awesome. Now you don't ask them about their preferences in clothing or music or things that aren't relevant.
Just what's relevant for our lens.
Just what's relevant. And this is the direction that AI needs to go to become suitably trusted, which is you need to have just enough information to do what you do really well. But I tell you what, sometimes those seemingly extraneous pieces of information do give you useful things. And I'll give you an example here. Clearly, from what I've said, the examples I've given, I'm a motorcycle rider, and I've had the most unusual experience. I sat next to someone at a rugby game, obviously very important thing to do in New Zealand, and it was an All Blacks game. And I was sitting next to this guy, and we're chatting, talking just a little bit. He's very cautious about what he said. And then I happened to notice on the side of his glasses, he had 93. Now, 93 is the motorcycle riding number of Marc Marquez, who's one of the greatest motorcycle riders. Amazing guy, brilliant rider. He's won 7-time world champion, I think. And I said, Marquez? He said, yeah. I said, I'm all about Marquez and Rossi. So before you knew it, we were talking about motorcycling. 3 months later, he'd signed up as a customer. I didn't know at that stage that he was CEO of one of the largest companies in the country. Right. We were talking about rugby, but I saw this tiny thing. Now, the other place this happens, and this is classic, someone reaches forward in a business meeting, their sleeve rolls up and you see a little bit of a tattoo. Before you know it, you're not talking about tattoos. So completely contrary to what we were saying, maybe one of the questions is, how do you bring in the personalization of who people are and what they care about? How do you bring that in to a business like yours? You're meant to be asking the questions here. I don't know, but that's something I think is going to come up as privacy concerns lift. You're going to say, you know what? It is important for us to know about the music tastes. And if someone's got a tattoo and they ride a motorbike, that's really important. Still good people. We want to do business with them. But how do we build that into relevance? Maybe it's not relevant to the topic, but it's relevant to building trust. I don't know, but there's a question for you.
This is an excellent question. I do think we are going to wrap this up here because it's going to be very long and a lot of information for everybody listening. Yeah. I will try to get you back on the show for a future episode for
I'd love to
more specific AI chat and more examples, motorcycle or whatever examples. It's been really interesting. I'm taking so many things away from this, but really this flexibility of being able to adapt whatever comes up, because really nobody knows. This asking questions, or just really thinking about the right questions to ask to understand what's happening or how it could affect or where things could be going, and just really having this open mind to pretty much embracing what's coming and really making the best of it, while not forgetting about what makes us human here. I really want to thank you for taking the time here to talk to us. We'll have this episode over at SEOLeverage.com/podcast, episode number 128. Tim Warren, how can people reach out to you if they want to know more about you, hear more stories, or get in touch?
Yeah, look, the best way is through LinkedIn. Go to LinkedIn, put in Tim Warren, you're going to find me. Otherwise, it's LinkedIn/IN/TS Warren. And I love making connections, and I love making them all around the world as well. So connect to me, send me a message about what piqued your interest, and I'd love to spark up a conversation there.
This is amazing. We're going to make sure we link to your LinkedIn specifically from our show notes as well. Thank you so much, and I hope we can have you back soon. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.